Confidence is not built by hype. It is not built by motivation. And it is not built by pretending you feel strong. Real confidence is built by control. If your emotions decide your actions, you are not confident, you are exposed. If your mood determines your discipline, you are unstable. If pressure makes you react, you are predictable. This audiobook will show you why emotional discipline, not motivation, is the foundation of unshakable confidence. The kind that doesn't speak loudly. The kind that doesn't explain itself. The kind that remains calm while others collapse. This is not about feeling better. This is about becoming stronger. Listen carefully, because confidence is built in silence by the person who stays in control. Chapter 1. Stop trying to feel confident. Stop chasing a feeling. That's the first command. Confidence is not an emotion. It never was. It never will be. Yet most people waste their lives trying to feel confident before they act. They wait for motivation. They wait for certainty. They wait for the mood to be right. And while they wait, nothing changes. That's the trap. You have a choice. You either act first and let confidence follow, or you wait for confidence and stay exactly where you are. That's the key. Confidence does not come from how you feel. It comes from what you repeatedly do. Let this sink in. Every time you rely on emotion, you hand control away. Every time you say, "I don't feel ready," you delay progress. Every time you wait for confidence, you prove you don't have it. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Say it again. Confidence follows discipline, not emotion. Look at your own life. Be honest. When have you ever felt confident before doing something difficult for the first time? You didn't. You acted uncertain. You acted nervous. You acted anyway. And only after repetition did confidence appear. That's how it always works. The mind lies. The body learns. People who chase confident feelings stay insecure because feelings fluctuate. One bad night of sleep and their confidence disappears. One negative comment and they collapse. One failure and they retreat. Why? Because their confidence was emotional, not earned, not reinforced, not grounded in proof. Real confidence is built on evidence. Evidence that you can act without permission. Evidence that you can move forward despite discomfort. Evidence that you do what you said you would do. You don't need their permission. Not from people. Not from your mood. Not from fear. Waiting for confidence is asking for permission from weakness. That's the harsh truth. You don't rise to the level of how you feel. You fall to the level of your discipline. That's the key. Think about the most composed people you know. They are not emotional. They are not hyped. They are not loud. They are steady. Why? Because they don't negotiate with feelings. They move on standards. Standards create consistency. Consistency creates proof. Proof creates confidence. Confidence follows discipline, not emotion. Say it again. Most people get this backwards. They think, once I feel confident, I'll speak up. Once I feel confident, I'll take action. Once I feel confident, I'll be consistent. No, that day never comes. Confidence is the result of action, not the requirement. You have a choice. Act now imperfectly, or wait forever, comfortably insecure. And comfort is the enemy here. Comfort keeps you weak. Comfort keeps you reactive. Comfort keeps you dependent on feelings. Discipline makes you solid. This is not about becoming fearless. It's about becoming reliable. Reliable to yourself. You said you'd do it? Then do it. Even when you don't feel like it. That's confidence training. You wake up tired. You act anyway. You feel uncertain. You move anyway. You feel exposed. You proceed anyway. That's the repetition that builds confidence. Not affirmations. Not hype. Not pretending. Action. Again and again. Until doubt loses credibility. That's how confidence is built. You don't think your way into confidence. You behave your way into it. It's not about how you feel. It's about what you execute. That's the discipline. And here's what insecure people do that confident people never do. They check their emotions before they act. How do I feel today? Am I confident enough? Am I ready? Wrong questions. The disciplined person asks, what needs to be done? Then does it. That's it. No drama. No negotiation. No delay. Confidence follows discipline, not emotion. Burn that into your mind. Because once you understand this, you stop wasting energy trying to fix your feelings. You stop overthinking. You stop waiting. You move. And movement changes everything. The moment you act without emotional permission, something shifts. You realize you're not fragile. You realize discomfort doesn't break you. You realize fear doesn't control you. That realization is confidence. Earned, not imagined. Most people never get this far. They stay trapped in emotional loops. Up one day, down the next. Strong when praised, weak when challenged. That's not confidence. That's dependence. And dependence is not power. Power comes from emotional discipline, from choosing action over feeling, from choosing consistency over comfort. You have a choice. Every single day. You can keep asking, how do I feel? Or you can decide, this is what I do. That's the shift. And once you make it, confidence becomes inevitable. Not because you're special, but because discipline compounds. Day after day, action after action, proof after proof. You stop trying to feel confident, and you start becoming someone who doesn't need to feel anything to act. That's real confidence. And this is only the beginning, because once you stop chasing feelings, you start seeing the real enemy. Not fear, not doubt, but emotional reactions. You've learned that confidence is not emotional. Now it's time to see how emotions, when uncontrolled, leak your power. You stopped trying to feel confident. Now let's expose what destroys it. Chapter 2. Emotional reactions are leaks. Every reaction is a signal, and most people don't realize what they're signaling. When you react emotionally, you expose yourself. You reveal what bothers you. You show where you are weak. You announce what controls you. That's the leak. You think you're expressing yourself. You think you're being honest. You think you're standing your ground. But in reality, you're handing power away. What reacts can be controlled. That's the rule. Say it again. What reacts can be controlled. The moment someone can predict your reaction, they can manipulate your behavior. They know how to push you. They know how to distract you. They know how to destabilize you. That's not strength. That's exposure. You have a choice. You can react and feel temporary relief, or you can stay composed and keep control. That's the key. Most people leak power daily without noticing. A comment irritates them. A look offends them. A delay frustrates them, and instantly emotion takes the wheel. Their tone changes, their body tightens, their words speed up, their logic disappears, and everyone in the room feels it. Calm people don't do this. Calm people dominate rooms without speaking because they are unreadable. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what affects them. You don't know where their buttons are. That uncertainty creates presence. Stillness creates gravity. Emotional reactions destroy that. When you react, you shrink. When you stay calm, you expand. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about not obeying it. There's a difference. Emotion will always arise. That's human. But action is a choice. You have a choice. You can feel anger without expressing it. You can feel pressure without showing it. You can feel challenged without defending yourself. That's discipline. Most people don't lack intelligence. They lack emotional control. And emotional control is what separates those who command respect from those who demand it. Think about it. Who feels more powerful? The person who reacts loudly, or the person who remains silent and composed? The answer is obvious. Silence unnerves reactive people. Calmness frustrates manipulators. Control intimidates insecurity. That's why emotionally disciplined people are often misunderstood. They're called cold, detached, arrogant. But the truth is simpler. They refuse to leak power. What reacts can be controlled. Let that echo. Every emotional outburst is information. It tells people what matters too much to you. It tells them where your identity is fragile. And once that information is out, it can be used against you. That's not paranoia. That's reality. In negotiations, in relationships, in work environments, in conflict, the person who reacts first loses leverage. Always. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove anything. Reaction is not strength. Restraint is. It's not about anger. It's about discipline. It's not about passion. It's about control. That's the key. Look closely at your own behavior. When someone criticizes you, what happens? Do you immediately defend? Do you explain? Do you justify? That's a leak. When something doesn't go your way, what happens? Do you complain? Do you vent? Do you tense up? That's a leak. Every unnecessary reaction drains authority. Calm people don't rush to respond. They pause. They observe. They choose. That pause is power. That pause says, I am not ruled by this moment. Most people are uncomfortable with silence because silence gives control to the person who can hold it. That's why reactive people talk more, move more, explain more. They're trying to regain control they already lost. Emotionally disciplined people don't chase control. They retain it. What reacts can be controlled. You must train yourself to see emotional reactions as liabilities, not expressions, not personality traits, liabilities. Because every time emotion dictates action, discipline disappears. And where discipline disappears, confidence erodes. This connects directly to what you learned in the last chapter. Confidence does not come from emotion. It comes from discipline and proof. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you build proof. Every time you don't react, you reinforce identity. Every time you choose restraint, you strengthen confidence. Not outwardly, internally. And internal confidence is the only kind that lasts. You don't need to announce calmness. You embody it, and people feel it immediately. That's why calm people dominate rooms without speaking. They're not competing. They're not reacting. They're not trying to be seen. They already are. This is not about becoming passive. It's about becoming precise. You still act. You still speak. You still decide. But you do it deliberately, not emotionally. You choose when to respond. You choose what deserves energy. You choose where attention goes. That's control. And control is confidence in motion. You have a choice. The next time something triggers you, pause. Don't react. Don't explain. Don't defend. Observe what happens. You'll feel discomfort. That's normal. But beneath that discomfort is growth. Because every reaction you don't give is power you keep. Say it again. What reacts can be controlled. And once you understand this, you stop fearing pressure. You stop fearing confrontation. You stop fearing judgment. Because none of it can move you without your permission. You don't need their permission. You are in control of your responses. That means you are in control of yourself. And that's the foundation of real confidence. But we're not done. Because once you stop leaking power through emotional reactions, something else becomes clear. It's not your personality that creates presence. It's not charisma. It's not volume. It's discipline. And discipline speaks louder than words ever could. You've learned how reactions weaken you. Now it's time to understand what truly builds authority. You sealed the leaks. Now let's build the structure. Chapter 3. Discipline is louder than personality. Most people hide behind personality. They think confidence is something you project. They think presence comes from being loud, expressive, impressive. It doesn't. Loud confidence is compensation. Quiet discipline is certainty. Read that again. When someone needs to announce who they are, it's because their behavior hasn't proven it yet. When someone needs attention, validation, approval, it's because they don't trust their own foundation. That's the truth most people avoid. You don't project confidence. You demonstrate it. That's the key. Personality is easy. Discipline is rare. Anyone can talk. Anyone can perform. Anyone can act confident when conditions are comfortable. But discipline shows up when no one is watching. When it's inconvenient. When there's no applause. That's why discipline speaks louder than personality ever could. Look around you. The loudest people often feel the weakest. They over-explain. They overreact. They overpromise. Why? Because noise is a cover. Noise distracts from inconsistency. Quiet people with discipline don't need to advertise. Their habits already made the introduction. Your habits speak before you do, and they never lie. You can't fake consistency. You can't fake composure under pressure. You can't fake reliability. People may not remember what you say, but they always remember how predictable you are. Do you show up? Do you follow through? Do you stay composed when others panic? That's confidence. Not attitude. Not tone. Not image. Behavior. You have a choice. You can spend energy trying to look confident, or you can spend energy becoming disciplined. One fades quickly. The other compounds. That's the key. Think about the people you respect most. Not admire. Respect. They are not performing. They are not seeking attention. They are not chasing approval. They are steady. They move with intention. They speak when necessary. They act without drama. That steadiness comes from discipline, not personality. Personality changes with mood. Discipline stays. Personality reacts to environment. Discipline shapes it. This is where many people get uncomfortable, because discipline removes excuses. You can't say, "That's just who I am." You can't say, "I'm emotional by nature." You can't say, "I work better under pressure." Those are personality-based escapes. Discipline doesn't care. It's not about who you are. It's about what you do consistently. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. You don't project confidence. You demonstrate it. And demonstration happens in small, boring, repetitive actions. Waking up when you said you would. Completing what you start. Staying calm when challenged. Holding standards even when no one is enforcing them. These actions stack. And when they stack, something happens. People stop questioning you. They stop testing you. They stop doubting you. Not because you demanded respect, but because your discipline earned it. That's how real authority forms. Authority does not come from personality. It comes from predictability. People trust what is predictable. Your habits speak before you do, and they never lie. You can speak confidently for 5 minutes, but your habits speak for you every day. You can impress once, but discipline impresses repeatedly, and repetition is what creates certainty. This chapter connects directly to the last one. You learned that emotional reactions leak power. Now you see what replaces that lost power. Discipline. When you stop reacting, discipline becomes visible. When you stop explaining, consistency becomes noticeable. When you stop performing, reliability stands out. That's when confidence becomes undeniable. You don't need their permission to be disciplined. You don't need praise. You don't need recognition. You need standards. Standards create habits. Habits create identity. Identity creates confidence. In that order. Most people try to skip steps. They want confidence without habits, identity without standards, respect without consistency. It doesn't work. It never has. The disciplined person doesn't need to be loud. Their presence is already felt. Why? Because discipline removes unpredictability. Others know how you will act. They know you won't panic. They know you won't flinch. They know you won't fold. That certainty is calming. And calmness is power. This is why disciplined people are trusted with responsibility. Trusted with leadership. Trusted under pressure. Not because they speak well, but because they act reliably. You don't project confidence. You demonstrate it. And every day you are demonstrating something, whether you realize it or not. Either discipline or inconsistency, either control or chaos. You have a choice. Today you can adjust one habit, one standard, one behavior, and that small change will speak louder than any personality trait ever could. This is not about becoming boring. It's about becoming solid. Solid people don't shake. They don't posture. They don't compensate. They move forward. And once you understand this, you stop asking, "How do I look?" You start asking, "Did I do what I said I would do?" That question changes everything, because the answer builds or destroys confidence. You've seen that personality doesn't create presence. Discipline does. Now it's time to go deeper, because discipline alone isn't enough if you're trying to control the wrong thing. You can't control outcomes. You can't control people. You can't control circumstances. But you can control something far more important. You built discipline. Now learn where to apply it. Chapter 4. Control yourself before you try to control outcomes. Most people are obsessed with outcomes. They want results to change. They want people to behave differently. They want life to cooperate. And because they can't control any of that, they get frustrated. They tighten up. They push harder. They react emotionally. That's weakness. Trying to control people or results without self-control is exposure. You don't need control over life. You need control over yourself. That's the key. Say it again. You don't need control over life. You need control over yourself. Outcomes are external. People are external. Circumstances are external. And anything external is unstable by nature. If your confidence depends on external stability, you will never feel secure. If your composure depends on outcomes, you will always be reactive. If your sense of control depends on others, you will always be disappointed. You have a choice. You can fight reality, or you can master yourself. One creates chaos. The other creates power. Most people do the opposite. They try to manage conversations. They try to force respect. They try to manipulate results. And when it doesn't work, they get emotional. They complain. They argue. They explain. They blame. That behavior reveals one thing clearly. They lack internal control. Because someone who controls themselves doesn't need to control others. Self-control removes desperation. Self-control removes urgency. Self-control removes reactivity. That's why emotionally disciplined people appear calm under pressure. Not because pressure disappears, but because it no longer controls them. Emotional discipline creates consistency under pressure. That's the difference. Anyone can look confident when things go well. Anyone can stay composed when there's no resistance. But pressure exposes truth. Under pressure, undisciplined people tighten up. They rush decisions. They overtalk. They force outcomes. Disciplined people slow down. They don't need immediate results to feel okay. They don't panic when timelines stretch. They don't lose identity when plans fail. Why? Because their control is internal. You don't need control over life. You need control over yourself. That phrase should challenge you, because it removes excuses. You can't blame circumstances. You can't blame people. You can't blame timing. You can only look inward. And that's uncomfortable for most people, because controlling yourself requires restraint. It requires patience. It requires emotional regulation. It requires you to sit with discomfort without acting on it. That's discipline. Think about how often people try to control outcomes through emotion. They get angry to force compliance. They get loud to assert dominance. They get passive-aggressive to regain leverage. Those are not strategies. Those are reactions. And reactions always weaken position. What reacts can be controlled. You learned that already. Now you're seeing where reactions come from. From the need to control outcomes instead of self. When you stop needing a specific outcome to feel stable, something changes. You become flexible. You become patient. You become composed. And paradoxically, your results improve. Why? Because clarity replaces urgency. Because discipline replaces panic. Because consistency replaces emotional spikes. Emotional discipline creates consistency under pressure. That's not theory. That's reality. Look at high performers. In business, in leadership, in conflict, they don't try to control every variable. They control their response. They understand something most people don't. You can't force respect. You can't force success. You can't force outcomes. But you can force discipline. And discipline creates leverage. When others rush, you wait. When others react, you observe. When others panic, you execute. That's control. And control builds confidence. Not emotional confidence. Structural confidence. The kind that doesn't disappear when plans fail. You have a choice. The next time something doesn't go your way, you can try to force the situation, or you can tighten your internal standards. One leads to frustration. The other leads to authority. It's not about control. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. You don't need control over life. You need control over yourself. Most people misunderstand strength. They think strength is dominance. They think it's assertiveness. They think it's getting their way. No. Strength is restraint under pressure. Strength is staying composed when outcomes are uncertain. Strength is holding standards when results are delayed. Strength is choosing discipline when emotion is screaming. That's why emotional discipline is rare. It's uncomfortable. It forces you to sit with uncertainty without acting out. It forces you to delay gratification. It forces you to accept what you can't control. But in exchange, it gives you something priceless. Stability. And stability is power. Once you stop trying to control outcomes, you stop fighting reality. Once you stop fighting reality, your energy returns. Once your energy returns, your execution improves. That's the chain. People who try to control everything burn out. People who control themselves endure. Endurance beats intensity. Consistency beats force. That's the discipline advantage. This chapter builds directly on the last ones. You stopped chasing feelings. You stopped reacting emotionally. You built discipline over personality. Now you're applying that discipline correctly, inward, because without self-control, every attempt at control becomes manipulation. And manipulation always fails eventually. You don't need their permission to stay composed. You don't need life to cooperate. You don't need outcomes to align. You need internal command. And internal command changes how you move through the world. You speak less. You listen more. You choose carefully. You act deliberately. That's what people feel when they say someone has presence. It's not dominance. It's control. Self-control. And once you understand this, pressure stops being a threat. Pressure becomes a filter. It exposes who is disciplined and who is emotionally dependent on outcomes. You are choosing which side you're on. Every day, every reaction, every pause, every decision. You don't need control over life. You need control over yourself. And once you have that, something becomes very clear. Control creates calm. And calm is the ultimate advantage. You've learned where to apply discipline. Now it's time to see what discipline creates inside your mind. Because when the mind is calm, nothing rattles you. You mastered self-control. Now learn why calm always wins. Chapter 5. The calm mind always wins. Chaos feels urgent. Calm feels slow. That's why most people choose chaos. They mistake urgency for importance. They mistake emotion for clarity. They mistake speed for progress. And they lose. The calm mind always wins. Say it again. The calm mind always wins. Emotional chaos clouds judgment. It narrows vision. It shortens patience. It forces rushed decisions that feel right in the moment and fail later. When emotions spike, intelligence drops. That's not an insult. That's biology. Under emotional pressure, the mind seeks relief, not accuracy. It wants the discomfort to end. So it chooses the fastest option, not the best one. That's how people sabotage themselves. They react instead of assess. They move instead of think. They speak instead of wait. And then they wonder why their results are inconsistent. You have a choice. You can let emotion rush your decisions, or you can slow down and keep control. That's the key. Calm decision-makers outperform talented but reactive people every time. Talent without calm is wasted potential. Skill without control collapses under pressure. Intelligence without discipline becomes noise. You've seen this in real life. The smartest person in the room panics. The most talented person overreacts. The most emotional person self-destructs. Meanwhile, the calm person keeps moving forward. Not because they're better, but because they're stable. Stability creates clarity. Clarity creates precision. Precision creates results. The calm mind always wins. Emotional chaos doesn't just affect decisions. It slows execution. When you're emotionally charged, everything feels heavier. Tasks feel harder. Problems feel bigger. Obstacles feel personal. You burn energy fighting your own mind. Calm removes friction. When the mind is calm, actions are clean. No second guessing. No overthinking. No emotional residue. Just execution. That's why calm people get more done with less effort. They're not fighting themselves. Most people think intensity equals productivity. It doesn't. Intensity burns fast and fades. Calm endures. That's discipline. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need approval to pause. You don't need validation to think clearly. You need composure. The calm mind always wins. Pressure exposes this difference instantly. Under pressure, reactive people speed up. They rush conversations. They rush decisions. They rush conclusions. Calm people slow down. They create space. They ask better questions. They see what others miss. That space is everything. Because space gives perspective. Perspective gives advantage. This is why calm is intimidating. You can't rush someone who isn't anxious. You can't manipulate someone who isn't emotional. You can't overwhelm someone who is grounded. They don't move on your timeline. They move on principles. That's control. It's not about being passive. It's about being deliberate. Calm doesn't mean inaction. It means precise action. You still decide. You still act. You just don't let emotion decide for you. That's the difference. Most mistakes are not made because people don't know better. They're made because people felt something and acted on it. Anger, fear, impatience, ego. Emotion hijacks logic. And once logic is gone, talent doesn't matter. Calm decision-makers outperform talented but reactive people because they preserve logic under pressure. That's rare. And rarity creates advantage. You have a choice. The next time pressure rises, do less, not more. Slow your breathing. Lower your voice. Delay your response. That pause is not weakness. That pause is strength. Because in that pause, emotion loses momentum. And when emotion slows down, clarity returns. That's the key. The calm mind always wins. This chapter connects directly to what you've learned so far. You stopped chasing feelings. You stopped reacting emotionally. You built discipline over personality. You learned to control yourself instead of outcomes. Now you're seeing the payoff. Calm. Calm is not personality. Calm is trained. It's built through repetition, through restraint, through choosing not to react again and again. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you build trust with yourself. Every time you don't panic, you reinforce identity. Every time you slow down, confidence deepens. Not loud confidence, quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't shake. And once you experience this, you stop fearing chaos. Because chaos only affects the reactive. You become harder to rush, harder to provoke, harder to destabilize. That's when people feel your presence. Not because you demand attention, but because you're centered. The calm mind always wins. Say it until it's automatic. Because this principle will save you from more mistakes than talent ever will. But calm doesn't appear by accident. It's built somewhere most people avoid. In private. In silence. When no one is watching. You've learned why calm matters. Now it's time to learn where it's built. Because public composure is forged in private discipline. You mastered calm under pressure. Now let's talk about where real confidence is created. Chapter 6. Confidence is built when no one is watching. Most people try to look confident in public. Very few try to become confident in private. That's the difference. Confidence is not built on stages. It's built in silence. When no one is watching. When no one is applauding. When no one is holding you accountable. That's where the foundation is set. Who you are unseen defines who you are everywhere. Say it again. Who you are unseen defines who you are everywhere. Private discipline creates public certainty. The way you carry yourself in public is not a performance. It's a reflection. A reflection of what you do when there is no pressure to impress. No one to judge. No one to praise. If your discipline disappears when you're alone, your confidence will collapse when you're exposed. That's the key. Most people want public confidence without private standards. They want respect without consistency. They want authority without restraint. It doesn't work. Because confidence is memory. Your body remembers what you do repeatedly. Your mind remembers whether you follow through. Your nervous system remembers whether you keep promises to yourself. Those memories show up in how you speak, how you stand, how you decide. You can't fake that. What you do alone shapes how you carry yourself everywhere. If you avoid hard things in private, you hesitate in public. If you procrastinate when no one is watching, you doubt yourself when it matters. If you break promises to yourself, you lose internal trust. And without internal trust, confidence is impossible. You have a choice. You can live two lives, disciplined in public, careless in private, or you can live one life, consistent everywhere. One creates anxiety. The other creates certainty. That's the key. People who look confident but feel insecure are always managing an image. They're always tense, always alert, always afraid of being exposed. Because deep down they know the truth. They know they didn't earn it. Earned confidence is different. Earned confidence doesn't need attention. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need reinforcement. It's quiet. It's grounded. It's solid. And it's built in private. Think about your habits when no one is watching. How you wake up. How you speak to yourself. How you handle boredom. How you respond to discomfort. Those moments matter more than any public performance. Because those moments train your identity. Who you are unseen defines who you are everywhere. Most people underestimate this because private moments feel insignificant. They feel small. They feel unimportant. They're wrong. Small actions repeated privately create massive internal shifts. Every time you do what you said you would do, when no one is watching, you reinforce self-trust. Every time you resist comfort in private, you strengthen discipline. Every time you stay consistent without reward, you build confidence. Not emotionally, structurally. That's the difference. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. It's not about feeling inspired. It's about being reliable. That's the foundation. You don't need their permission to train in silence. You don't need recognition. You don't need praise. You need standards. Standards don't disappear when no one is watching. Standards are who you are. That's the key. Look at people who carry themselves with certainty. They don't rush. They don't over-explain. They don't posture. Why? Because they are not compensating for private inconsistency. They don't need to prove anything. Their confidence is already settled. Private discipline creates public certainty. And the opposite is also true. Private inconsistency creates public insecurity. You can see it instantly. The hesitation before speaking. The defensiveness under pressure. The need to explain. The emotional reactions. Those are symptoms. Symptoms of someone who doesn't trust themselves yet. And self-trust is built alone. When you choose discipline without witnesses. When you act without applause. When you hold standards without enforcement. That's where confidence is forged. Most people avoid this stage. Because it's uncomfortable. Because it's boring. Because it's quiet. There's no adrenaline. No recognition. No validation. Just you. And your choices. That's why it works. Because discipline that survives boredom survives pressure. You have a choice. Tonight. Tomorrow morning. This weekend. You can either do what you always do, or you can act like the person you want to become. Not publicly, privately, because public behavior is downstream from private identity. What you do alone shapes how you carry yourself everywhere. This is where confidence becomes permanent. Not situational. Not emotional. Not dependent on outcomes. Permanent. You don't need a crowd to practice discipline. You need solitude. And solitude reveals truth. In solitude, excuses don't work. In solitude, emotion has nowhere to hide. In solitude, you either act or you don't. That choice defines you. Who you are unseen defines who you are everywhere. Let that confront you. Because once you accept this, you stop performing. You stop posturing. You stop seeking validation. You start building. Quietly. Relentlessly. Daily. And over time, something shifts. You walk differently. You speak slower. You decide faster. Not because you're trying to look confident, but because you no longer doubt yourself. Confidence stops being something you chase. It becomes something you carry. This chapter connects everything you've learned so far. You stopped chasing feelings. You stopped reacting emotionally. You chose discipline over personality. You learned to control yourself instead of outcomes. You trained calm under pressure. Now you see where all of it is built. In private. And once this clicks, you realize something important. Confidence doesn't come from other people. It doesn't come from praise. It doesn't come from results. It comes from alignment. Alignment between who you are alone and who you are in the world. When those two match, confidence is automatic. But there's one more obstacle most people never overcome. The need to explain themselves. The urge to justify. The addiction to validation. You've built confidence in silence. Now it's time to protect it. Because nothing destroys quiet confidence faster than over-explaining. You built strength unseen. Now learn how to keep it intact. Chapter 7. Stop explaining yourself. Most people talk too much. Not because they're clear, but because they're insecure. Over-explaining is insecurity disguised as clarity. Read that again. When you explain too much, you are not informing. You are defending. You are justifying. You are asking for permission. Confident people don't convince. They proceed. That's the key. Explanation is often a reaction. A reaction to doubt. A reaction to fear of being misunderstood. A reaction to the need for approval. And every reaction leaks power. You have a choice. You can explain yourself into exhaustion, or you can act and let results speak. One weakens your presence. The other strengthens it. Emotionally disciplined people do not rush to explain. They don't narrate their intentions. They don't pre-defend their decisions. They decide. They act. They move on. Why? Because explanation invites debate, and debate invites doubt. When you explain too much, you open the door for others to judge, challenge, and negotiate your decisions. Strong people don't negotiate their standards. They don't need their permission. Confident people don't convince. They proceed. Most people explain because silence makes them uncomfortable. Silence feels like exposure to them. They feel the urge to fill space. But silence is not weakness. Silence is certainty. Silence says, I am comfortable with my decision. Over-explaining says the opposite. It says, I need you to understand. I need you to agree. I need you to validate this. That's not clarity. That's dependency. And dependency kills confidence. You've already learned this pattern. Emotional reactions leak power. Personality cannot replace discipline. Self-control beats outcome control. Calm always wins. Private discipline builds certainty. Over-explaining violates all of that. It's emotional. It's reactive. It's unnecessary. It comes from the same place as emotional outbursts. Fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being misunderstood. But disciplined people understand something important. Being misunderstood is not fatal. Being weak is. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need to understand yourself. That's the key. Let's be clear. This is not about being rude. This is not about being cold. This is not about refusing to communicate. It's about precision. You say what needs to be said. No more. No less. Then you stop. You don't add emotional padding. You don't justify unnecessarily. You don't defend preemptively. Because confidence doesn't over-explain. It stands. Think about people with real authority. They don't ramble. They don't convince. They don't plead. They give direction. They give decisions. They give outcomes. And they move. Confident people don't convince. They proceed. Say it until it hurts. Most people explain because they're trying to manage perception. They want to control how they're seen. But earlier you learned the truth. Trying to control others without self-control is weakness. Explanation is often a control attempt. You're trying to steer opinions, trying to prevent disagreement, trying to avoid discomfort. And in doing so, you lose presence. Because presence comes from stillness. When you stop explaining, something uncomfortable happens at first. Silence. And silence forces you to sit with uncertainty. Will they understand? Will they disagree? Will they judge? Discipline means you allow that uncertainty without reacting. That's growth. Every time you resist the urge to explain, you build self-trust. Every time you let silence stand, you reinforce authority. Every time you act and stop talking, confidence deepens. Not outwardly, internally. And internal confidence always shows. Over-explainers are easy to spot. They speak quickly. They add unnecessary context. They defend decisions that weren't attacked. Why? Because they don't trust their own position yet. Trust comes from repetition. When you consistently act in alignment with your standards, explanation becomes unnecessary. Your behavior already explains everything. Your habits speak before you do, and they never lie. That's why emotionally disciplined people let results speak. They understand something critical. Words are cheap. Results are not. Anyone can explain intentions. Few can demonstrate consistency. So disciplined people choose demonstration. They show up. They execute. They follow through. And over time, explanation becomes irrelevant. Because results answer questions before they're asked. Confident people don't convince. They proceed. You have a choice. The next time you feel the urge to explain, pause. Ask yourself one question. Is this explanation necessary? Or is it emotional? That question alone will change how you communicate. Necessary explanations are brief. Emotional explanations are long. Necessary explanations are factual. Emotional explanations are defensive. Necessary explanations end cleanly. Emotional explanations keep going. Learn the difference. That's discipline. You don't need their permission to stop explaining. You don't need approval to be concise. You don't need validation to stand by your decisions. You need self-control. And self-control shows up most clearly in speech. When you speak less, people listen more. When you explain less, your words carry weight. When you stop convincing, your actions lead. This is not about ego. It's about efficiency. Energy spent explaining is energy not spent executing. And execution builds confidence. Over-explaining drains it. This chapter protects what you've already built. Private discipline gave you certainty. Calm gave you clarity. Self-control gave you stability. Now you're learning how not to sabotage it. Because many people build confidence, then talk it away. They leak power through words. You won't. You will act. You will execute. You will let silence do the work. And as you stop explaining, something surprising happens. People begin to take you more seriously. Not because you demanded it, but because you stopped needing approval. That's presence. And presence is rare. You've learned to build confidence in silence. You've learned to protect it through restraint. Now it's time to understand why this discipline gives you an advantage most people never develop. Because emotional control is not just personal strength. It's a competitive advantage. You stopped explaining. Now let's talk about why discipline separates winners from everyone else. Chapter 8. Emotional control is a competitive advantage. Most people are skilled. That's the uncomfortable truth. They're educated. They're trained. They're capable. And still they lose. Why? Because skill without emotional control collapses under pressure. Stability beats talent when pressure rises. Say it again. Stability beats talent when pressure rises. Talent looks impressive when conditions are easy. Skill shines when there's time. Intelligence performs when emotions are calm. But pressure changes the game. Pressure compresses time. Pressure magnifies emotion. Pressure exposes weakness. And under pressure, emotionally unstable people unravel. You've seen it. The talented person who panics. The smart person who overreacts. The skilled person who self-sabotages. Not because they lack ability, but because they lack control. Emotional control is the separator. That's the key. Most people are skilled but emotionally unstable. They can perform until something goes wrong. They can focus until they're challenged. They can lead until they're criticized. Then emotion takes over. And when emotion takes over, discipline disappears. That's why emotional control is a competitive advantage. Because it's rare. Everyone wants to talk about mindset. Everyone wants confidence. Everyone wants success. Very few are willing to train stability. Stability under pressure. And pressure is where outcomes are decided. You have a choice. You can rely on talent and hope conditions stay favorable. Or you can build discipline and stay effective regardless. One is fragile. The other is durable. Leaders are not the most talented people in the room. They are the most stable. They don't flinch when things go wrong. They don't spiral when plans fail. They don't get emotional when challenged. They adapt. Why? Because discipline under pressure separates leaders from followers. Followers react. Leaders respond. Followers get loud. Leaders get calm. Followers blame circumstances. Leaders adjust behavior. That's control. And control compounds. When others panic, you think. When others rush, you slow down. When others overreact, you execute. That contrast creates authority. Not because you demand it, but because pressure reveals it. Stability beats talent when pressure rises. Think about competitive environments. Business, sports, negotiations, crisis situations. The winner is rarely the most gifted person. It's the most composed one. The one who makes fewer emotional mistakes. The one who conserves energy. The one who stays clear-headed when others lose clarity. That's not luck. That's training. Emotional discipline creates consistency under pressure. You learned that earlier. Now you see the broader implication. Consistency is advantage. In a world full of reactive people, the stable person stands out immediately. Not loudly, quietly. People trust them, follow them, give them responsibility. Why? Because predictability under pressure is valuable. People don't trust intensity. They trust reliability. And reliability comes from emotional control. You don't need their permission to stay composed. You don't need validation to remain calm. You don't need praise to keep standards. You need discipline. Most people burn energy reacting to stress. They fight reality. They complain. They resist. Stable people conserve energy. They accept reality quickly. They adjust strategy. They move forward. That efficiency creates momentum. Momentum creates results. And results create authority. That's the chain. Talent without stability breaks. Stability without talent still wins. Because pressure doesn't reward potential. It rewards execution. You have a choice. When pressure rises, you can tighten emotionally, or you can ground yourself and slow down. One leads to mistakes. The other leads to advantage. Pressure doesn't create character. It reveals it. And what pressure reveals most clearly is emotional discipline. That's why emotionally controlled people are often underestimated at first. They don't perform. They don't posture. They don't hype. They wait. And when pressure hits, they separate. That separation is what people mistake for confidence. But confidence is just a byproduct. The real asset is control. Control of attention. Control of emotion. Control of response. Most people give that control away. To stress. To ego. To fear. And then they wonder why they're always chasing. Emotionally disciplined people don't chase. They position. They understand timing. They understand leverage. They understand patience. Because patience is impossible without emotional control. Stability beats talent when pressure rises. This applies everywhere. In conversations. In leadership. In decision-making. In conflict. When someone tries to rush you, stability protects you. When someone tries to provoke you, stability shields you. When circumstances tighten, stability guides you. Talent alone can't do that. Talent reacts emotionally when threatened. Stability does not. That's why emotionally disciplined people last longer. Grow faster. Rise further. They don't burn bridges. They don't make impulsive decisions. They don't destroy momentum with emotion. They play the long game. And the long game always favors the disciplined. This chapter ties directly to everything you've learned so far. You stopped chasing feelings. You sealed emotional leaks. You chose discipline over personality. You learned self-control over outcome control. You trained calm. You built confidence in private. You stopped explaining yourself. All of that creates one thing: stability. And stability is advantage. Not flashy, not loud, but decisive. Most people never develop it. They stay reactive. They stay emotional. They stay inconsistent. And they get left behind. You won't. Because now you understand the real competition. It's not against others. It's against your own reactions. Every time you choose discipline over emotion, you gain ground. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you separate. Every time you hold standards when others fold, you advance. That's how leaders are made. Not through talent alone, through control. But there's one final shift that turns this advantage into something permanent. Because emotional control is powerful, but only if it's rooted in something deeper than comparison. You've learned to outperform. Now you must learn to stop seeking validation. Because true confidence doesn't compete. It stands. You've seen why stability wins. Now let's talk about the final form of confidence. The kind that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. Chapter 9. Confidence is not loud, it's solid. Loudness is not confidence. It's compensation. Loudness seeks validation. Solidity ignores it. That's the difference. Stillness is strength. Say it again. Stillness is strength. Most people misunderstand confidence because they confuse visibility with certainty. They think confidence announces itself. They think it dominates conversations. They think it fills space. It doesn't. Real confidence is quiet, grounded, unmoved. You feel it before you hear it. That presence doesn't come from volume. It comes from control. Emotional control creates a grounded presence others feel immediately. Not because you demand attention, but because you don't need it. That's the key. Loud people are trying to be seen. Solid people already are. Loudness is restless. Solidity is settled. And people sense the difference instantly. Think about the people who make a room feel calmer when they enter. They don't rush. They don't posture. They don't perform. They stand comfortably in themselves. That comfort is not personality. It's discipline. It's the result of everything you've learned so far. Not chasing feelings. Not reacting emotionally. Not relying on personality. Controlling yourself, not outcomes. Staying calm under pressure. Building confidence in private. Speaking less. Explaining nothing. All of that produces solidity. And solidity is rare. Most people are internally noisy. Their minds race. Their emotions spike. Their identity shifts depending on the room. That internal noise leaks outward. You can hear it in their speech. See it in their movements. Feel it in their energy. Solid people are different. They are internally quiet. Their emotions don't rush them. Their thoughts don't scatter. Their identity doesn't bend for approval. That internal stillness creates external gravity. Stillness is strength. You don't need their permission to be quiet. You don't need validation to slow down. You don't need recognition to remain grounded. You need alignment. Alignment between your standards and your behavior. When that alignment exists, confidence stops being something you do. It becomes something you are. That's solidity. Loudness is fragile. Why? Because it depends on response, on feedback, on attention. When attention disappears, loud confidence collapses. Solidity doesn't care. Solidity remains when ignored, when challenged, when tested, because it was never built on reaction. It was built on discipline. Emotional control creates a grounded presence others feel immediately because grounded people don't need to prove anything. They don't seek agreement. They don't defend identity. They don't compete for status. They move at their own pace. That pace communicates confidence more than words ever could. Most people think confidence is something you add. More assertiveness. More boldness. More expression. They're wrong. Confidence is something you remove. You remove reactivity. You remove insecurity. You remove the need to be seen. What remains is solidity. Stillness is strength. Notice how loudness shows up when people feel threatened. They interrupt. They talk over others. They exaggerate. They dominate space. Those behaviors are not power. They're fear responses. Solid people don't do that. They don't need to control conversations. They don't need to win arguments. They don't need to be the center. They are centered. That's the difference. You have a choice. You can keep performing confidence, or you can become grounded enough to stop performing altogether. One is exhausting. The other is effortless. Effortless confidence is not born from talent. It's born from discipline. The discipline to stay calm. The discipline to stay quiet. The discipline to stay consistent. That discipline creates emotional control. Emotional control creates presence. Presence creates respect. In that order, people respect solidity because solidity feels safe. Unpredictable people feel dangerous. Reactive people feel unstable. Loud people feel insecure. Solid people feel reliable. And reliability attracts trust. That's why leaders who last are rarely the loudest ones. They are the steadiest. They don't react to noise. They don't chase validation. They don't flinch under pressure. They hold position. Stillness is strength. This chapter is the final refinement. You're no longer learning how to build confidence. You're learning how to embody it. Embodiment means there's no gap between who you are and how you act. No posturing. No exaggeration. No compensation. Just alignment. When you reach this stage, something important happens. You stop comparing yourself to others, because comparison is a loud person's game. Solid people don't compete on volume. They compete on consistency. And consistency always wins over time. You've learned how to outlast, outperform, outgrow. Now you're learning how to remain untouched. Because the final level of confidence is not dominance. It's independence. Independence from emotion. Independence from validation. Independence from reaction. That's freedom. And freedom is the highest form of confidence. Stillness is strength. Say it until it becomes your default. Because once you internalize this, nothing rattles you. Criticism doesn't move you. Praise doesn't inflate you. Pressure doesn't rush you. You remain solid. This is what people feel when they say someone has presence. Not charm. Not charisma. Groundedness. And groundedness comes from emotional command. You've built discipline. You've built calm. You've built stability. Now there's only one step left. To make yourself untouchable. Because when nothing triggers you, nothing controls you. You've learned to be solid. Now learn to be unshakable. Chapter 10. Become unshakable. When nothing triggers you, nothing controls you. That is the final truth. Say it slowly. When nothing triggers you, nothing controls you. This is what it means to be unshakable. Not fearless. Not dominant. Not aggressive. Unshakable. Most people think strength is about pushing harder, reacting faster, responding louder. It's not. Strength is staying intact when pressure tries to pull you apart. And pressure will come. Criticism, uncertainty, delay, disrespect, failure. These things are unavoidable. What is avoidable is losing yourself when they appear. That's where emotional discipline comes in. Emotional discipline turns chaos into clarity. That's the key. Chaos exists outside you. Clarity is built inside you. The unshakable person understands this deeply. They don't try to eliminate stress. They eliminate reactivity. They don't try to control the world. They control themselves. You are in control. Say it again. You are in control. Not of outcomes. Not of people. Not of circumstances. Of yourself. That control is what makes you unshakable. Most people give their power away automatically. Someone criticizes them, they react. Something goes wrong, they panic. Someone disagrees, they defend. Each reaction is a surrender. and each surrender reinforces weakness. But discipline interrupts that pattern. Discipline creates space between stimulus and response. That space is everything. In that space you choose. You have a choice. You can react and feel temporary relief, or you can stay composed and keep control. That choice determines your life. Unshakable people are not emotionless. They feel everything, but they are not obedient to emotion. They feel anger without acting on it. They feel fear without retreating. They feel pressure without collapsing. That is mastery, and mastery creates clarity. Emotional chaos confuses judgment. Emotional discipline sharpens it. When you stop reacting, the mind clears. When the mind clears, decisions improve. When decisions improve, outcomes follow. Not instantly, not dramatically, reliably. That reliability is confidence in its final form. Not loud, not visible, not performative, internal. You are in control. The unshakable person does not rush to respond. They do not explain themselves. They do not seek validation. They observe. They assess. They act deliberately, because nothing is pulling them emotionally. Triggers no longer dictate behavior. And when triggers lose power, so does chaos. Think about what used to shake you. Criticism, silence, rejection, pressure. Those things only had power because you reacted to them. Once reaction stops, their influence fades. Not overnight, but permanently. Every time you choose discipline over emotion, you reclaim control. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you strengthen identity. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you become harder to move. That's how unshakable confidence is built. It's not built in moments of victory. It's built in moments of restraint. You don't need their permission to stay grounded. You don't need approval to hold your position. You don't need validation to trust yourself. You are in control. That sentence should settle you, because control removes urgency. When you know you can handle yourself, nothing feels overwhelming. Deadlines don't rush you. Criticism doesn't define you. Failure doesn't break you. You adapt. That adaptability is power. Most people collapse when their identity is threatened. They argue. They explain. They react. The unshakable person lets identity speak through behavior. No defense needed. Silence becomes strength. Patience becomes leverage. Clarity becomes direction. Emotional discipline turns chaos into clarity. This is the culmination of everything you've learned. You stopped chasing feelings. You stopped leaking power through reactions. You chose discipline over personality. You controlled yourself instead of outcomes. You trained calm. You built confidence in private. You stopped explaining. You gained competitive advantage. You became solid. Now you become unshakable. Unshakable means your state is not rented out to circumstances. Your mood is not owned by other people. Your confidence is not tied to results. Your identity is not fragile. You remain. This doesn't make life easy. It makes you reliable. And reliability is freedom. Freedom from emotional swings. Freedom from validation addiction. Freedom from reaction. You are in control. Say it until it's automatic. Because once this becomes your baseline, the world changes. Not because the world is nicer, but because it can't move you the same way. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of panic. You act instead of explain. That's unshakable. And here is the final challenge. From this point forward, measure your growth by one thing: how little life can move you emotionally, not how much you achieve, not how loud your confidence looks, how calm you remain, because calm is proof of control, and control is confidence completed. When nothing triggers you, nothing controls you. That is the standard. Carry it with you, daily, quietly, relentlessly. You are in control. Confidence is not something you wait for. It is something you build. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you build it. Every time you act without emotion, you reinforce it. Every time you stay disciplined when motivation disappears, you prove it. You do not need louder words. You do not need validation. You do not need permission. You need control. Control your reactions. Control your habits. Control your standards. That is where real confidence comes from. Not excitement, not hype, not approval. From discipline, from consistency, from emotional command. Now the challenge is simple. Carry yourself like someone who is in control. Act like someone who does not break under pressure. And build confidence the only way it lasts: quietly, daily, relentlessly. The calm mind always wins.